All right, thank you for staying with Daybreak. Let's bring up what you're saying at Trevor Mbija at Citizen TV Kenya. Use the hashtag Daybreak, talking about the appointments in different places. Before we talk about the CDF now, that's coming up in the next 1 or 2 minutes. Let's see what you're saying. The Economic says the nominations on the PS lack regional, gender and ethnic balance. We must be honest. Other Kenyans can't be spectators in governance and taxpayers only. Okay. Bobo Tieno Wino says President William Ruto has done well regionally following his principal secretary's appointment, though he fell short of the 2/3 gender balance. Okay. Godi Baraza says every Kenyan citizen hopes the team that President William Ruto has constituted to serve will primarily focus on pure service delivery. These are the people who will either contribute to the success or failure of the Hustlers Redemption Plan. All right, Engineer Lazaro says Cabinet should be strictly cautioned against playing regional partisan politics and nepotism in their respective portfolios. All right. Now let's talk about matters to do with CDF. Members of Parliament now want the National Government Constituency Development Fund entrenched in the Constitution. And Dr. Nyikala, I'll start with you on this. How important is the CDF and how did it get to this level where it is now unconstitutional and members of Parliament are fighting to have it legalized?
Okay, I think you must remember the history of CDF. CDF came into being before the Constitution 2010. And it was the realization that MPs actually needed to have some kitty, which to some extent was under them. You know, those were the days of huge arambes and MPs were not earning much. And therefore their relevance in the communities they came, the constituencies they served was questionable. And so it came, I think it was Engineer Karue at that time that they brought up this. So it worked well because it is close to the people. Although the MPs are in charge, so to speak, it is close to the people. There is a project management committee that consists of the community that is being served. If it is a school, is the school board or the school committee. That actually is the project management committee. Yeah. And therefore, the money is actually disbursed to that committee, and the committee actually carries out the implementation of the project. So that there is a lot of involvement of the people themselves. Two, before the projects are identified, there is actual public participation, which is done, and people say, in this area, we need this, we need this, we need, and it has gone to a large extent to schools. Before the Constitution, it actually was used in all areas, in health, in water, even in agriculture. But now it is whether it is national government function, to a large extent education and security. And so there is public participation, there is involvement in implementation, and two, access. Because it is very close to the people. It is actually the closest fund to the people now. And if there's a problem, like let's say dormitories burnt in a school, or toilets have collapsed, or the school building, a school building has collapsed, the management of the school will approach the CDF office and the MP and say, we have a problem. And quite often, within a week, a decision has been made because there's emergency funds in there. The decision has been made, and they see action being taken, and they're involved in the action. I think that is what has made it extremely popular with the citizens. And also, I think it is the most cost-effective. The staff that runs the CDF is actually lean. I think in a constituency, they're actually less than 20 in most cases. So the cost-effectiveness is actually very, very high. And you have seen when you do buildings, if you compare even with the counties and governors here, it is high. And I don't blame the counties. It is actually the process. When the process starts, the people involved, it eventually makes it big. But this one, the number of people involved are limited. Okay. And in schools, it has done tremendous work. Classrooms have changed across the country. You go these days, you can't make a distinction between a secondary school and a primary school. Mud houses, mud classrooms in many constituencies are no longer there. We have reached a situation where in some constituencies, even the floor is now tiled. And people are seeing this, and it's being done in their own hands.
Yeah.
Like somebody said in my constituency, I never believed that even my children can be in a classroom with tiles. They come back when they're cleaner. We don't wash clothes a lot because it is clean. Yeah. So people have felt that a lot.
Okay.
Even in security, it has done police lines, police houses, it has done chief's offices.
Yeah.
You know, chiefs to a large extent and assistant chiefs have been working from their houses. So that when a new assistant chief is appointed, people tell him, tell your wife to make a bigger birika for tea. Yeah. Because in the morning, people come to your house. But now, actually, they are getting offices done for them.
Okay.
So people felt it.
Yeah.
It is cost effective. People involved in selecting the projects. Yeah. People are involved in implementing it.
Okay.
Now, what then happened is when we now, with the new constitution, there's devolution, then there are devolved functions.
Yeah.
And that is where the issue has come, that it is doing the work that perhaps would have been done by the counties. Yeah. And the split between the executive and the legislature. So there's a feeling, and that is what is really, that the legislature should not be involved directly in implementation.
Right.
Yes, so that is the big issue. Yeah. that is bring the issue. And so in 2013, in the 2013 Act, somebody went to court, and the court actually declared that it is unconstitutional at that point, and gave the provision that this should be corrected. And another act in 2015 then came into place, where the functions that to a large extent are county were removed, so that now it is mainly security and education. Health was removed, agriculture was removed, water was removed.
Okay.
And so it is that popularity, it is the ease with which it's available to the people, the cost effectiveness is popular. Okay. But the constitution as it stands, some people feel that it is unconstitutional, and that is where the conflict comes from. But I must say, this is not a devolved fund. It is actually a decentralized form of the national government. Okay. And even the MP is not really directly involved in implementation, even picking. Well, they may influence, like anybody will influence, any person in authority will influence a decision, but they're not directly doing it.
Okay. But, Governor, there's a position that this kitty was used by members of parliament to foster their own popularity, and sometimes there was also a bit of plunder here and there. But this argument that this should have been handled by the counties, is it a valid argument? Could this be handled by governors such as yourselves? What is the alternative?
Well, maybe, Trevor, to put a few facts right. I think what Dr. Nyikal says, to a large extent, is right. The question has not been whether CDF is effective. CDF was effective from the times of inception. Most of those little things that people started seeing from their counties or constituencies, and those small changes that we was talking about, police housing, police posts, classrooms, some dispensaries in the first years of its establishment. All those things, there were changes in community that were positive in its application. So I think to that extent, if you asked the 1 inch on ground whether they liked what CDF did, I think the answer has been yes. There has been effective change at that level. And the question has been its legality. And I think that's where members of parliament have struggled to match and reach the threshold of law to satisfy when this matter goes to court. How does the court rule? And how courts make their judgment. They make it simply based on what they said in the books. Not on whether that fund is effective or whatever, but what does the law say? And because Parliament is the house that makes laws, I think in its establishment, Parliament failed in the first place to have properly thought out and anchored this fund in law just before rolling it out. And that's why this battle has continued. Because ask yourself, Trevor, who has established all the other funds, all the other establishments of this country, including county governments?
Yeah.
It was Parliament. During the constitutional discussion and then promulgation, it was the work of Parliament all the way through. And so I think they did all the other things right, but on this, the fund of their own, they did it wrong. The question remains, are they able to, this time, with the moves that they have been making, in amending the Constitution, to have it anchored and make it constitutional, will that succeed and succeed in good time? I do not think personally that there would necessarily be a major conflict if they did things right and anchored it in law. I don't think that there would necessarily be a conflict between what the county is doing and what they are doing. Necessarily, I don't think so. Why? I would make my argument very simply. It's not only county governments that dispense funds or monies at county government level. National government does. They have taken up many responsibilities, some of them which actually are supposed to be done by counties, and they're doing themselves directly at the county government level. There are many other projects that are probably funded by private individuals, by other, some of them by donors, which are conditional grants. Of course, some of them, or most of them, come through the county government, which is a good thing. But the arena, and at the end of the day, I would base it on one fact. How much is national government rolling out or disbursing to county governments to carry out the responsibilities that have been put in the hands of county governments to take care of? Less than is required. So would more be bad? I think not necessarily. Remember, Trevor, we've also had this discussion for a long time about whether to establish ward development funds. And members of County Assembly have been very vigilant and not only combatant but persuasive in many ways that they need to have this fund. If it was established, anchored in proper law and with a proper framework of how it will be dispensed, it will still be meaning more money, more development, and a better life for our people at a ground level. I think at the end of the day, what we just need to have is a legal framework for any fund that would be established to go directly to the people. Speaking for county governments, I would say, and I believe that with the new government that we've got, that there will be a new look, a new approach to how do we address the question of enabling counties to satisfy the demand on ground from the citizens for good services, for adequate implementation and provision of the requirements on ground. And that can only be answered when there is a proper consideration that more funds should be given to county governments. And I believe at the end of the day, at national government level, what national government would want to see more is optimum service delivery. Not necessarily because national government does it themselves, but they would be more comfortable when they unburden themselves with the responsibility of leaving the centrality of their place here in Nairobi and going to ground to micromanage. I think it would work better if county governments are stronger, if much more money is within the people who are right on ground to carry out those services. So I think it's really a balance, but critical to make sure that every fund that has been established is established firmly in law, but again with a proper framework, checks and balances to make sure that it is effective, that it is used prudently, and that corruption and theft of public funds does not become, the end game. Establishment of such funds.
Okay, Gabriel, did the members of parliament fail on this one in your view? Because as the legal jargon continues, illegal, not legal, there are students at home right now who are expecting to be paid for school fees through CDF, and it's not happening.
Well, I think from the onset, and I wouldn't agree more with what Governor has said, and to an extent what Dr. has also said. I think if it was properly structured from the onset, I think we may actually be looking at a different picture. Yesterday, in fact, we had this argument that went in for hours about the proposal that the legislators, the MPs have brought to the floor of the House, where they now want it, anchored in our Constitution.
They increased by 5%.
Exactly, and then they increased from 2.5 all the way to 5%.
Yeah.
We can't run away from what Governor has said. It is not only, and I know this one we like a lot, it's not only about the checks. The balance also must come to play. Do you have prudent use of this fund? Yes, many people have actually eyed it and actually pointed it as, when it comes near elections, it's used as a political tool. In that, a member of parliament will decide who gets, the bursary, It has been it has been used, for that, to coerce and, other things. And I think it takes away the vital element of what that CDF should be. Now, let me be honest. I think it has done well in various areas. You look at what the late Ken Okoth was able to do with his CDF. He built the Raila Education Center here in Kibra, and he will tell you, many people came to actually see how he was able to do it. I remember members of parliament actually coming to even see what he was able to do with his CDF. Yeah. But coming to the point of where I think this is where it breaks the camel's back is, the legislation, what Dr. said, versus implementation. I've always looked at my member of parliament to have the power to just be a legislator. And many people have argued the same. And now you hear Kenyans talking about it. And it's being talked about even in the Bunge la Mwananchi. People are talking about having deep core legislators who are going to sit in parliament and make these critical laws. And then again, you have the county governments who have actually, some, not all, some who have actually brought in the element of implementing very good projects. Yeah. Governor has just told us again about the push for the World Development Fund. If that comes to play, CDF is still in play. For instance, the Ministry of Education has already started building classrooms. You saw what the former CS Magoha started doing, the low-cost classrooms. And this is the argument, wouldn't there be a duplication of roles? And that's why I agree with Governor when he said, we need to relook at some of these matters when it comes to money. It should not just be, we need. It must be followed with a staged structure. First one of responsibility. You put in a team that will be able to deliver. Yeah. You ensure that you have a plan. If it is the constituency building classrooms, or is it the governors who are going to run this? Who has the capacity to ensure that this implementation is done? If you ask me, contrary to what Dr. said, that the constituency is, is deep into the people. As much as I agree, you will see the fund is close. The ward is closer to the Mwananchi Mashinani more than the MP. And then again, the MP is always, most of them are always in Nairobi here, But that MCA, you expect them to be in Mashinani. That's where his dwelling is most of the time. And he is well connected with people Mashinani. So I think as we move along, these are some of the questions that are actually bringing out the debate. Yeah. Who should be, or where should this money lie? Because, if you look at the grand scheme of things, if I was asked, the county may actually do more, and here I stand corrected, may do more when it comes to implementation. Okay. And you just leave the members of parliament. And I know, this one you can get a hit in from. They do the part of legislation, so that we avoid this double work. Okay. Yeah, but you have to give it to them. Some of them, to be honest, have done really well, and I hope Shimua Daktari has done. All right. They've done very well with their CDF.
Dr. Nyikal, close this argument for us. Because
close it also, is actually.
There's one tweet here from William Mwembe, who says MPs are running away from the responsibility of oversight, representation, and legislation to executive roles. You won't be a referee at the same time a player. Who will audit this CDF?
Well, quickly to answer that, the CDF is still audited by the body that audits all other government structures, Kenya National Audit Office. So that's not an issue. But let me say whether the Parliament got it wrong when the legal structures was being put in place. The way I view it is that we actually just 10 years ago put in a new structure, the Constitution. It's a huge thing. We thought about it. But really, it is at the time of implementation that you start to see certain details that you could not see when you put it up. And it should be considered as a living document, so that as you go along, you find, okay, here now we are getting conflict. And that is really the need at that time to say, okay, now let's look at it and restructure it and put it in law. If we put all laws at once and they are okay, we wouldn't even need Parliament all the time. But we realize that as things change, as structures change, particularly our new constitution, you will find very many areas. I know very many areas that actually need to be looked at, like the provision of IBEC. I have a feeling IBEC should do more so that when documents come to Parliament at the Division of Revenue, we have details of what the counties need. Now we only use 15%, and we don't know what else. While the national government, we have a plethora of details of what they need. Now that's another area. So all I'm saying, it is an evolving process. It was in place before. The Constitution has come in place. Now we must find how we anchor it there properly. And I agree with my colleagues here that that legal structure must be put in place. Used for political purposes, let me tell you, like the most of all these, bursary is actually another very critical point, which people feel directly. And what you find is they not just go to the MP, but they're actually going to the members of the CDF committee. In fact, in my mind, the MP actually has been shielded by the structure of the committee, so that they go, because the committees are done in such an area, such a way that what are represented in the committee. So you see people going to those people saying, we need this, we need this. And who unto you, if the bursary is distributed in such a way that people perceive that it is not fair. And actually, this is one thing I can tell my colleagues. MPs have now realized the only way you can make this useful to you politically is do it well. There's no other way. If you try, you try something like certain areas will put more because you think that you get more support from there, and certain areas will give less. And because the people are near to you, they actually come to your office and say, Harper, this one found this one found this happened. So the involvement of the people is great. Obviously, if, for example, a new classroom is built and the MPs goes to open it, remember the MP didn't decide. It was public participation. And then they disbursed the money. And then the committee did it. But when you go to opening, you get the credit. That goes up to the president. I mean, if a project is done nicely in a place, the president goes to open it, he gets a credit. But he's not using it for political purposes.
But what do you tell the students who are at home this morning, because the school fees has not been paid through CDF?
That is why we are going. That is why we are saying it should be disbursed as quickly as possible. If you watched yesterday's debate, Honorable Tiende, when he ended up, he said we should disburse CDF because what the court talked about was CDF Act of 2013. 2015 has not been challenged.
So when are you
likely not delay anything?
Conclude this discussion so that
even this discussion should not slow the money being disbursed, because 2015, as we are saying, the act is intact. The money should be disbursed, even as we are doing this. But there's one small thing that I don't know is very clear, my colleagues here. What we are discussing in Parliament yesterday was actually not a bill. It was a legislative proposal.
It's a proposal.
I mean, this is the first time, my colleagues can say, that we have actually discussed a legislative proposal in the plenary of the House. Because it is so important and what was required, let us have as much input as possible so that when it is going to be drafted for publishing, most of the issues have been taken into consideration.
Okay.
So I think it's something we need to do. Let me just say about more money going to the counties. Yes. You remember the BBI. Counties need more money, and that's why I was saying, Governor, that's why I think ABEC should come in before we even change and say, because it just says not less than 15%. You can go anywhere, but BBI wanted to lock it higher.
Yeah.
Now we have locked it to 15. When we are doing the division of revenue, and you are in the Senate, and you know, what comes to the National Assembly, basically great details of what the national government needs. On part of the counties, we just use the 15%, the Commission for Revenue Allocation, the representation, and you don't see what is it that the counties are going to use this money for. For the national government, everything is there. That's why I'm saying we should, at IBEC level, I think we should change the timing of the budget process in the county to be in line with what is coming, so that IBEC, at that time, would even have a budget office that actually looks at what has come from all the counties, what do they need, amalgamate this together, and so when we have the budget policy statement, the needs of the counties are also known.
Okay.
And then we give them the money.
All right.
I'm just agreeing counties need more money if the devolution is to deliver to the people what we intended.
Governor, this is actually right down your alley. Can you confirm that counties have received their disbursements? Because just a few moments ago, governors were complaining.
Well, Trevor, I will answer that. First, let me agree to a large extent with Dr. on the alignment of the budget process at the county government level, and so that it is within the cycle and timing of a national government budget process, so that there is harmony between the two. But even more important, the inclusion of the details of what the allocation to county governments is intended, is supposed to do to fulfill the needs at the county government level. And I think one of the areas that has been at fault is because up to today, there has not been a firm, conclusive and exhaustive endeavor to ensure that the functions that have been devolved to county governments have been costed. Because the evil in the deal has been what Dr. has said. It's only said to be a percentage. Disburse 35% this time to county governments. But there has been no effort to say what needs is this 35% supposed to meet. And what happens when it comes to after the inception of devolution? What happened was that Senate devolved all the functions, all to county governments. And there has not been any follow-up that says how much does it cost to deliver optimum health services in Kiambu, for example, so that when you are coming up with a budget and the amount that has been disbursed to Kiambu, will the amount that has been allocated for the health function, is it adequate? And I think that's what needs to happen moving forward. I agree with you, Dr. There was a time we had that proposal in the Senate. I hope they will follow it, that even as senators represent county government's interests, it is important that when a senator is agitating and fighting for the amount that should go to his county, that they will need to be armed with the requirements of that county. And the best thing would be during the debate on how much will be disbursed in CARA, the county allocations bill, then what is the budget of your county? I think at county level, we should be able to get those budgets and arm our senators with them, such that when they are making the argument there on the floor, they are making it on the basis of a document saying this is the budget that has been proposed to run my county. And I think that eventually will make much more sense and be more persuasive even to national government. When we are saying devolve more funds, disburse more funds to the county government, there is basis upon which that argument will be made, and I believe it will be more persuasive. The question you asked was... have
you received funds?
Have we received
Are you able to pay your employees for the month?
Well, for this month, not yet. We received for the last month. We have had this discussion. It was one of the major discussions during the past IBEC that we did a few weeks ago, that the disbursements of funds belonging to counties has got to be set at what you would call automatic level, so that on a certain date that money is disbursed. Because at the end of the day, that money belongs to counties. Yeah. It is constitutional. There is no discussion about whether it will go or not go. What just is there is how much will be going, and that is known prior. So at a certain date, that money should be gone. Yeah. Because the people at the county government level, be it workers who've got to be paid their salaries, be it the need to offer the services, medical, otherwise, payment for ECD teachers and all those other aspects, building of roads, all that cannot wait for a discussion or an argument around Treasury, control of budget and other agencies as to how much and who and when. It should happen the way it happens at national government level. And that discussion we had, and I believe that we have a clear way forward. What now remains is for those guys in Treasury, our people there, at the Office of the Control of Budget, to make sure that there is absolute compliance.
So what is your backlog looking like? Are you able to pay the October salaries? When you said last month, do you mean September? Or are you able to pay October salaries? It's the 3rd of November now.
What most counties resorted to doing, including mine, was to have standing arrangements with commercial banks, such that at a certain date, then they pay your salaries, and you can deal with the rest of the staff
after.
But needless to say that is expensive for the county governments. It's a waste of funds, because no commercial bank will pay your salaries for a zero charge. They will charge you some consideration for doing that. That money would have gone to do something better in service delivery to the people. So that inefficiency is expensive, and I think it's important to say that if national government is punctual in that would help us save.
Okay, I'm spending a bit more time with you in this because we're talking about counties now. How can the relationship between MCAs and governors